Let us settle in, dear listener, and drift back through the mist of centuries, past glowing screens and sterile waiting rooms, past the soft beep of machines and white-coated physicians, and arrive instead at a time when medicine was not a science, but an art built upon mystery, ritual, and deeply rooted belief. Picture yourself in a narrow, timber-framed cottage nestled beside a muddy track in the English countryside, sometime around the year 1325. The scent of burning peat mingles with the faint sweetness of drying lavender and the musk of livestock outside your walls. The sun has barely risen, and the stillness of the hour seems to press in gently, like a warm woolen blanket. Beneath a coarse wool coverlet, you awaken with a soreness in your throat, a dull throb in your head, and a heaviness in your limbs that makes the act of rising feel like a distant ambition. There are no thermometers here, no tablets to swallow, no nurse to call. Only a quiet acceptance that something is wrong, and a vague hope that it might pass before it worsens. And so, wrapped in a cloak and guided more by instinct than understanding, a family member ventures into the village to summon aid. Perhaps they visit the monastery, where monks with knowledge of herbs and scripture may offer care. Or perhaps they knock on the crooked door of the local wise woman, rumored to know the healing properties of foxglove, mugwort, and bonewort, or to curse you, should you cross her. The more fortunate may secure the attention of a doctor, a rare and educated man who charges dearly for his services and carries his own kind of mystery. He does not bring a stethoscope or syringe, but instead arrives cloaked in fur or long robes, a leather pouch jingling softly at his side. From it, he produces items not of precision, but of tradition: vials of powdered horn, crushed rose hips, and dried leeches stored in cool, damp clay pots. He studies your pulse with solemn care, then examines a vial of urine held to the light, its color, cloudiness, even its scent offering clues to your condition. Perhaps he murmurs something about your humors, that ancient theory of balance between blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, and concludes that your illness stems from excess heat, or perhaps an imbalance of moisture in the body. The treatment, therefore, must be to restore balance. Maybe we'll be bleeding to draw off the bad blood, or purging to empty the body of poison, or perhaps a herbal poultice, a warm compress infused with comfrey and chamomile, to be laid upon the chest with a prayer whispered overhead. There is no diagnosis as we know it, no mention of bacteria or viruses, only the assurance that if the heavens favor you, you will recover. The doctor may consult the stars next, for astrology was not a superstition, but a respected tool of diagnosis. He might frown at the position of Mars, shake his head at the full moon, and suggest that tomorrow would be better for bleeding, as your body is under poor planetary influence today. And so, again, imagine being at the mercy not only of your illness, but of the alignment of distant planets. This was not foolishness, but custom, passed down through ancient texts and generations of belief. The very act of healing was seen as a sacred balance of body and spirit, of the known and the unseen. You may be offered a charm, a small linen pouch to tie to your wrist, filled with herbs and bits of bone, perhaps a prayer scrawled in Latin. You may be advised to avoid certain foods, to sleep on your right side, to abstain from certain thoughts. The path to healing was slow and winding, paved with rituals and riddles. And as we lie back tonight, letting the fires glow dim behind our eyes, we step fully into this world not to laugh at its ways, but to feel them. The texture of woolen sheets, the scent of marjoram steeping in hot water, the distant toll of a monastery bell calling the faithful to prayer. This was the world of the medieval doctor, where medicine danced on the edge of magic, and the hope of healing came wrapped in smoke and superstition. And as your breathing slows, and your thoughts begin to float like feathers on the wind, know that we are only at the beginning of our journey. For in the hours to come, We will walk deeper into the shadows of this forgotten past, uncovering what it truly meant to seek help and why so many did not survive it. Now, as the early morning mist clings to the sodden earth outside your window, and the sound of a rooster calling through the gray dawn echoes from a nearby thatched barn, let's wander deeper into the slow, uncertain world of medieval healing. Perhaps the village healer has arrived, her skirts damp with dew, her breath forming soft clouds in the chill. She is not called doctor. No, that is a term reserved for the rare university-trained men who live far beyond the reach of your hamlet. But she is known, trusted, and quietly feared. She carries a leather satchel worn by years of use, filled with dried herbs wrapped in cloth, small glass bottles sealed with beeswax, and other objects that are not always explained. Her hands are coarse but practiced, her voice low and steady. She may inspect you with careful eyes, touching your forehead gently before muttering. It's the heat rising from the stomach, likely a blockage of bile. Then, with a nod, she begins her work. There is no antiseptic, no latex gloves. She works with what the land and the lore have provided. Marigold to reduce fever, mugwort to ease the spirits, and honey, always honey, to sweeten and soothe. She may chew willow bark and press it against your gums for pain. The sick room is filled with scents, some sweet, like lavender and clove, others sharp, like vinegar and garlic crushed into paste. These smells are thought to ward off foul humors, unseen toxins that drift through the air, bringing disease. And again, you imagine lying still beneath the weight of these expectations, uncertain whether your healer's knowledge will comfort or curse. At times, the treatment turns strange. Perhaps she ties a toad to your chest, its pale underbelly pressed against your skin, believing it will draw out the fever. Or she may burn a parchment bearing sacred words and mix the ashes into wine for you to drink. These are not tricks, but traditions passed from healer to healer, mother to daughter, over centuries. You do not question them, you hope. Now, if your ailment seems beyond her means, your family may scrape together coin to summon a traveling physician. These men, if they come at all, arrive on horseback or cart, wearing somber robes and carrying wooden cases lined with iron instruments. The tools glint dully in the firelight. Long lancets for bloodletting, sharp razors for lancing boils, brass syringes for flushing wounds. There's something chilling about their order, about the methodical way the doctor removes each one, laying them on a clean cloth, explaining little. You may be asked to bite down on a piece of leather or wood as the procedure begins. There is no anesthesia, only pressure and pain, and the hope that it leads to healing. And again, imagine that. Imagine your fear giving way to trust, because there is no other choice. The doctor may collect your urine in a glass vessel, a flask shaped like a bladder, rounded at the bottom and narrowing at the top. He holds it up to the light, swirling it gently. Is it cloudy? Is there sediment? The color tells all, or so the theory says. The physician consults a chart painted with 20 shades of yellow and brown, matching it against your sample. Perhaps he frowns and says, the liver's overburdened, or too much choler in the blood. This diagnosis is drawn not from microscopes or tests, but from a blending of observation and inherited belief. Again, your fate hangs in the balance. And it is not just the physical body under examination. The soul, too, must be considered. Illness is often seen as a punishment, a reflection of sin or spiritual imbalance. You might be told to confess your misdeeds, to fast for several days, or to donate to the poor as part of your healing. The village priest may be summoned to anoint you, to pray over you, to warn of temptations. The lines blur, medicine, religion, astrology, all entwined into one living tapestry. Perhaps you are told the moon is wrong for bleeding, that Mars governs the blood, and he sits unfavorably this week. Treatment must wait, they say, and so you wait. Time passes slowly in your darkened room. The only sound the occasional wind through the shutters or the soft mumble of prayer outside your door. Days stretch into one another. If you are lucky, you begin to feel your strength return. The herbal teas, the quiet, the warmth of blankets may help you recover. Or perhaps your body simply fought off the illness on its own. But if you worsen, more drastic measures may be taken. A bleeding might be ordered, a vein opened in the arm or behind the knee, the blood collected in a shallow basin. The doctor watches, counting drops, estimating how much to take. Too little, and it may be ineffective. Too much, and you weaken beyond repair. Again, imagine the slow drip of your own lifeblood into cold iron, while candles flicker and shadows stretch along the wall. It is a terrifying, tender thing, this attempt at healing. Not cruel, but desperate, for they believed they were helping. They wanted to restore balance. They had no germ theory, no antibiotics, no scans or charts. Only the body, the stars, the ancient texts in their hands. And still you hope. You hold on. You close your eyes and try to sleep, letting the scent of rosemary calm your mind. Somewhere outside, the evening bell tolls, calling monks to vespers. The world quiets again. For now, there's nothing more to do but rest and trust and wait. And so we pause, here in this soft hour, wrapped in wool and wonder, preparing to drift ever deeper into the age of uncertain cures and hopeful hands. Now let us drift slowly into the very heart of medieval medical thought, a world not ruled by germs and genomes, but by the quiet, invisible pull of the humors. These ancient fluids, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, were believed to govern every part of human life. Your mood, your appetite, your energy, and your health. Imagine, once again, you are lying beneath a woolen blanket, staring at the timbered ceiling of your family's home, while a fire crackles low in the hearth. Your skin is clammy, your lips dry. The physician sits beside you, his voice calm and certain, as he explains that your humors have become unbalanced. Too much heat, perhaps, or too much moisture. And so he prescribes a treatment, gentle bleeding, to restore what nature has misplaced. A basin is prepared, clean but worn, and a cloth is placed beneath your arm. The physician selects a lancet, a short, sharp blade, wrapped in cloth and passed down through the generations. No anesthesia numbs your skin. Instead, you're asked to look away. A candle flickers. Your breath slows. The blade presses in. Blood begins to flow, thick, dark, and slow at first, then thinner, lighter. The physician watches carefully. He knows the signs, or believes he does. Perhaps he murmurs, "Too dark, it carries the melancholy." And so he lets it flow longer. A few ounces, no more than necessary. You are given a mixture to sip, spiced wine with ground myrrh and a touch of poppy juice, to ease the nerves and steady the stomach. And again, imagine that warmth leaving your body, the lightness that follows, the strange floating sensation of weakness that is mistaken for relief. You're told to rest, not to eat until morning. No meat, no cheese, perhaps a bit of barley water or a broth made with leeks and sage. And for the next days, your pulse is checked, not with instruments, but with fingertips. The doctor holds your wrist, eyes closed, lips barely moving as he counts the rhythm of life in your veins. If your pulse is fast, he may say the liver is overheated. If slow, the spleen is sluggish. And from this, more treatments are offered. Cupping perhaps, hot glass jars pressed onto your skin to draw toxins outward. Or leeching. Yes, again, imagine it. Small black creatures placed upon the flesh, their mouths finding purchase, their bodies swelling with your blood. It is not done cruelly. In fact, it is done gently, carefully, with a small prayer that it will bring you balance. Because that is the goal. Not cure necessarily, but balance. equilibrium, harmony between what is inside and what is written in the stars. You are told to sleep facing east, where the sun rises. You are told not to bathe during certain moons. You are reminded to keep your humors calm. No outbursts of emotion, no overindulgence in food, no walking barefoot after sundown. Everything comes back to balance. And again, you wonder, how fragile must life have felt then? With no clear answers and only ancient theories to lean on? Your body was a mystery, a riddle, an alchemical puzzle to be solved with herbs and symbols, with sacred texts and the guidance of Mars or Saturn. The doctrine of signatures told healers which plants to use. Because nature marked her cures, they said. A walnut resembles a brain, so it must be good for the mind. Liverwort, shaped like the liver, must heal it. And so, fields and forests were scoured for these signs. Leaves with spots, roots shaped like limbs, flowers that bled red sap. These became your medicine, crushed into pastes, boiled into tonics, tucked into linen satchels tied around your neck. And you trusted them, because they were all you had. And so we float, gently, on this strange tide of belief. A time when doctors read both your pulse and the stars, when your blood was not just blood, but a message from the soul. A time when the body was not separate from the universe, but a mirror of it. What happened in the sky was reflected in your organs. A comet could foretell a plague. A red moon might predict fever. And again, imagine living within that web, where every part of nature spoke to your health. The wind, the rain, the color of your stool, all mattered. Everything was evidence. And so, as the fire fades and your breath grows slower, let us lie still and feel what it must have felt like to surrender your body to this ancient logic, this comforting structure of elements and essences, even as the world remained uncertain. Healing came not in a pill, but in patience, in ritual, in trust. And as your thoughts grow softer, like fog drifting across a sleepy meadow, we will prepare to move forward, deeper still into the world of potions, plagues, and prayers. Now, as we drift deeper into this shadowy world of healing and hope, let us find ourselves in a small, dim apothecary shop tucked into a winding street of cobblestones, where the air smells of musty herbs, aged wood, and the faint sweetness of dried petals. The shelves that surround you groan gently under the weight of glass vials and wooden boxes, their surfaces smudged with chalky residue and flecks of dried leaves. Some bottles are carefully labeled in Latin, while others bear only symbols, crosses, stars, a simple feather. The light is low, filtering in through a high, narrow window, casting long golden beams that dance across the surfaces like the shimmer of candlelight upon water. You can hear the distant creak of floorboards as the apothecary moves about in slow, deliberate steps. He wears a long brown robe that brushes the ground, and his hands are stained, perhaps with ink, or perhaps with the remnants of the day's work, gathering roots and grinding seeds. There is no rush here, no sense of urgency. Time, like everything else, moves slowly. Again, imagine this place, quiet and calm, lined with objects whose names carry weight and wonder. Orris root, valerian, belladonna, rue. In one corner, a mortar and pestle sit atop a sturdy table, flecks of crimson powder still clinging to the rim. Next to it, small drawers hold dried centauri, crushed mustard seed, and pale fragments of dried lily bulb. Some of these ingredients are gentle, designed to soothe the cough, to lull the anxious mind into rest. Others are more dangerous, reserved for the desperate and the dying. Foxglove, known to still the heart. Henbane, to dull pain but invite hallucination. And mandrake, that twisted, human-like root whispered about in hushed tones. And yet all are tools. All are part of this careful alchemy. The apothecary may prepare a cordial for you, something warm, sweetened with honey, stirred with a cinnamon stick. Or perhaps he grinds a mix into a poultice to be placed upon your chest, held there with strips of linen soaked in warm wine. There are no mass-produced pills here, no factory seal capsules. Everything is prepared by hand, with memory, with instinct, and with care. Now imagine him placing items into a small cloth pouch, perhaps for a traveler or for a mother to keep beneath her pillow. A dried sprig of rosemary for remembrance. A small pebble once dipped in holy water. A bit of beeswax to melt and mix with sage. These pouches are not simply medicine. They are hope bundled in a cloth. You are told to carry it with you, to whisper your name to it before sleep, to place it on your chest if your breath grows shallow. Such practices are not written in medical tomes, but pass from one soul to another across generations. And again, you wonder, how much of healing comes from belief? From the act of preparing? From the touch of someone who says, softly, this will help. The apothecary believes in balance too. He charts the stars. He knows when a moon is waxing, when the air is damp, when the days lengthen. He may tell you not to brew the chamomile tea until the second hour after dusk, when the herbs have rested, or to crush the bark just before dawn, when its properties are strongest. There is a rhythm to this healing, one that follows nature's breath, not a ticking clock. Outside, the village carries on. A child with a cough is brought to the door. A man with aching joints waits patiently for a tincture. A widow brings a lock of her husband's hair, hoping for something to ease the dreams that won't let her rest. And all the while, the apothecary moves softly, quietly, like a priest of plants. The shop grows darker as the sun lowers behind the hills. Candles are lit, beeswax, with a scent of honey and smoke. Shadows stretch across the shelves, and the bottles glow like amber jewels. You may be given a draft to take home, or perhaps a satchel of leaves to steep in a tea. Instructions are simple. Stir clockwise, breathe deeply, thank the earth. And now, imagine preparing that tea in your own home, the steam rising in lazy spirals, the scent calming your nerves. You sip slowly, wrapped in a woolen shawl, as the room darkens and your limbs grow heavy. Perhaps you feel no immediate relief, but perhaps you feel seen, cared for, and that too is healing. These small rituals, the preparation, the drinking, the stillness after, are as important as any ingredient. The apothecary knows this, and so do you. And again, imagine how healing might feel when it moves slowly, when it is not rushed, not sterile, not isolated. When it involves your senses, taste, smell, warmth, and your spirit. The boundary between health and hope is porous here, like gauze, like smoke. And so, in the gentle dark of this shop, surrounded by the ancient tools of earth and fire, let us linger just a little longer. Let us breathe in the lavender, touch the smooth glass, listen to the mortar as it grinds another remedy into existence. Let us believe, just for a moment, that somewhere in these bottles and bundles lies the answer. That healing is not always a cure, but a comfort. That it may come not only through change, but through care. And as the last candle flickers and the apothecary whispers a blessing over his final bottle of the night, let us slip once more into the softness of slumber, where all aches are distant, and all healing is gentle and slow. And now, as we drift even further into this quiet world of medieval medicine, let us leave behind the apothecary's shelves and follow the soft tolling of a distant bell, one that echoes across fog-laced hills and calls the faithful not only to worship, but to healing. Imagine yourself walking slowly through dew-kissed fields at first light, the air thick with the scent of damp soil and wild thyme, toward a humble chapel tucked beside a stream. Its stone walls are cool to the touch, laced with ivy and moss, and its wooden door opens with a creak that feels older than memory itself. Inside, the air is different, still, scented with beeswax and frankincense. The floor is worn smooth by generations of feet, and the walls are hung with tokens, wax limbs, wooden hearts, crude paintings, each one left in hope or in thanks for healing granted. Again, imagine kneeling there, your hands resting on the stone ledge beneath the image of a saint. Perhaps it is Saint Apollonia, patron of aching teeth, her figure holding a pair of pincers, or Saint Dymphna, who soothes the disturbed mind, or Saint Roch, protector against plague, lifting his robe to show the wound on his thigh. You whisper your ailment, barely audible, not knowing if anyone hears, but feeling, somehow, that you're no longer alone. A priest may offer a blessing, or holy water, or perhaps a relic, a splinter of bone in a glass vial, or a cloth that once touched a martyr's tomb. You're told to sleep with it near your chest, or to place it beneath your pillow and dream with intent, because healing here is as much spiritual as it is physical. A fever may be the body's weakness, but it may also be a test of faith. Again, imagine the flicker of candlelight on ancient stone, the rustle of robes, the murmured chants that blend with your breath until you feel drowsy, almost untethered. Outside, others arrive with their own silent prayers. A mother lays a blanket on the altar, woven from the wool of a sick child's lamb. A soldier limps forward with a ribbon tied around his sword arm. A girl leaves behind a braid of her own hair. These are not medicines in the modern sense, but they are offerings. And in that offering, there's ritual, there is order, and within that order, there's a kind of peace. And again, you begin to sense how much of healing in this world is bound not to certainty, but to symbolism. You may be given a charm, a tiny iron key tied with red thread, or instructed to visit a sacred spring, said to have flowed since the time of angels. You walk there in silence, cup your hands beneath the water, feel its chill pass through your skin like a memory. Maybe you drink, maybe you do not, but the act remains, the pilgrimage, the faith, the pause. Imagine, then, that your illness is not seen as random, but meaningful. That each affliction speaks a language of sin, of soul, of imbalance between heaven and earth. The healer might ask not what you ate or touched, but what you dreamed last night, who you quarreled with, what you confessed or withheld. Illness may be punishment or purification or a divine mystery to endure. And yet, in the margins of this holy healing, there is also fear. Whispers of curses, of charms gone wrong, of eyes that bring misfortune, the dreaded evil eye, cast by envy or malice. To guard against it, you are told to wear salt in a pouch near your heart, or a piece of jet, or to draw a circle around your bed with blessed chalk. The line between saint and sorcerer, between healer and heretic, is often thin. A midwife who soothes pain with herbs might be praised in one village, condemned in another. And so people walk carefully, speak softly, trust their instincts more than their tongues. And again, you can feel it, can't you? The quiet tension beneath the surface. The need to believe in something, anything, that gives shape to your suffering. You are taught to say prayers for healing at sunrise, to light a specific candle on a Tuesday, to speak a certain verse over the steam of a poultice. These acts may not change the illness, but they change the experience of it. They bring comfort. They slow time. They remind the soul that it is still being seen, and that perhaps is their greatest power. Imagine now lying beneath a woolen blanket, eyes fluttering shut, a smooth stone held in your palm, a charm from your grandmother, who swore it had soothed her fever when she was your age. It is warm now, though it was cold when you first touched it. Your breath slows, the room fades, and whether the stone holds magic or memory, it does not matter. You believe, and again, perhaps that is enough. Healing in the medieval world was never only about the body. It was about the whole self, seen and unseen, flesh and faith, blood and breath. And so, as the chapel bells toll once more, and the scent of lavender smoke curls gently into the sky, Let us give thanks for the slowness of this ancient medicine, for its rituals, for its softness, for its willingness to sit beside the sick, with no answers, only presence. And let us rest for a while in the hush of candlelight, where each flame is a prayer, and each breath is a step towards sleep. And now, as twilight deepens over the old world and the air grows still, let us return to a quieter place, perhaps a long, wooden bench beneath a slanted thatched roof, where the fire crackles softly and the scent of burning sage curls upward like a lullaby. Here, we turn to the very heart of medieval medicine, the theory that underpinned so much of the care and so much of the harm. The four humors: black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, blood. You may have heard these strange, archaic terms before, but imagine them now not as foreign curiosities, but as real forces alive within you, shaping every ache, every mood, every fever and flush. Again, let your thoughts settle here in a world where the balance of humors explains all, from melancholy to madness, from toothache to temptation. Blood, they said, made one courageous and joyful. Too much black bile, and a soul grew cold and brooding. Phlegm dulled the senses. Yellow bile made a person irritable, angry, sharp of tongue. And so, if one was ill, the solution was simple in concept: restore the balance. Bleed the excess. Purge the surplus. Warm what was cold. Cool what burned. Imagine lying on a cot, your wrist laid bare, as a physician dressed in layered robes and smelling faintly of cloves and candle wax leans over you with a slender blade or a fine brass lancet. His touch is practiced, almost tender, as he wraps a linen band around your arm and begins the slow ritual of bloodletting. A basin is placed beside the bed, smooth and cool. The cut is shallow, deliberate. The blood flows in a steady rhythm. You are told to relax, to breathe, to let the body cleanse itself. Outside, birds call to one another in the hedges. A distant bell tolls. You watch the blood swirl in the basin like ink in water. And again, you wonder if you feel lighter or simply more vulnerable. Bleeding was believed to cure fevers, headaches, infections, even bad dreams. It was mapped according to the stars, aligned with the moon. Physicians consulted complex charts that told them on which day and at what hour and from which vein the blood should be drawn. A slip of the wrist, a shift in timing, and the cure might become a curse. Yet the ritual continued, again and again. Sometimes leeches were used instead, particularly for the very young or very weak. Imagine the physician reaching into a small jar filled with cool, dark water, his fingers wrapping gently around a glistening leech. He places it against your skin, and you feel the odd, cold suction as it begins its slow work. The sensation is not painful, only strange, almost ticklish. The leech drinks quietly, steadily. No tools, no fire, just the ancient rhythm of nature itself. Again, the physician waits, watches, removes the leech and places it back in the jar, its swollen body now red and heavy. You're given wine or broth, told to rest, to sleep, to trust the process. And in this world, where imbalance means suffering and balance means peace, you do. But healing was never just physical. The humors shaped personality, temperament, even morality. A cheerful person was said to be sanguine, ruled by blood. A cold, sluggish soul was phlegmatic. Lovers were diagnosed with an excess of yellow bile. Poets with too much black. Treatment could mean herbs to stir the blood or foods to dry the bile. You might be told to walk more often, to sleep with your window open, to avoid cabbage or drink more wine. Everything, every moment of living, was medicine or misstep. The physician's role, then, was not only to treat the body, but to interpret the signs, as if the patient were a holy book filled with codes and metaphors. And so he watched your eyes, your tongue, your urine, your breath. He listened not only to what you said, but how you said it. Too fast? Too slow? Was your voice high with bile or heavy with phlegm? He recorded the signs in quiet, cramped script on parchment yellowed with age. Often, he prescribed bleeding again, or emetics, or enemas, but sometimes he simply spoke, offered counsel, advised fasting or prayer or a warm compress at dawn. And again, you begin to see that even the harshest methods came wrapped in ritual. The sharp cut of the blade followed a soft chant. The bitter tonic was offered with a smile. Pain was dulled not only by opium or poppy, but by comfort, by care. Even as the blood spilled, the hand that held yours was steady. And isn't there, in that, a kind of healing too? The humors were wrong by modern understanding, but they held a logic, a poetry, a gentle order that made sense of the world. They allowed people to believe they could be understood, that their pain had meaning, that their suffering had structure. And again, imagine how soothing that might be, to know that your sadness was not sin, but simply too much black bile, that your nightmares weren't curses, but an imbalance of warm and cold, that everything could be shifted, adjusted, soothed, that even your wildest emotions could be traced to something inside you, something known. And so, let us rest now in this world of old wisdoms, where leeches sleep in jars by the hearth, and where the balance of fluids is the balance of life. Let us light a candle to the healers of the past, some misguided, some cruel, but many kind. Let us breathe slowly as the fire crackles low, as the night grows deep, as our humors, perhaps, find peace at last. Let the blood flow no longer, let the blade rest. Let your body be still, let the quiet take hold, and let the old ways, however flawed, remind us of one simple truth, that to be seen, to be touched, to be believed, is sometimes the greatest medicine of all. Let us now slip further into the candlelit silence of medieval medicine, beyond the leeches and lancets, and into a world filled with curious instruments and fragrant powders, where the line between science and superstition was often no more than a whisper. Imagine a small chamber tucked at the back of a monastery or town shop, its shelves sagging beneath the weight of knowledge in wooden boxes, glass vials, and pestle-crushed herbs. This is the apothecaries' den, and within its dim corners lies the old medicine. Not the kind poured from sterile bottles, but the kind grown from earth and gathered by hand. You may notice first the scent, a heady blend of lavender and rosemary, camphor and clove, mingling with the musk of beeswax and parchment. The air is thick with it. Dust dances through shafts of soft morning light. Everything is quiet, except the soft clink of iron tools and the whisper of mortar on stone. Imagine the apothecary here, a careful figure, face lined with thyme and smoke, who hums to himself as he sorts through bundles of dried yarrow and valerian root, his fingers stained with the ink of his own careful notes. Again, picture yourself sitting nearby, wrapped in a worn woolen cloak, the flickering light warming your hands as he grinds a mixture, something for sleep, perhaps, or the shivering sickness. He asks questions softly. When did the fever begin? Does it rise with the moon? Has your appetite changed? He may test your urine, or press 2 fingers gently beneath your jaw, counting your pulse with the same reverence a monk gives to prayer. And then he turns through shelves, murmuring the old names of plants. Hyssop, feverfew, wormwood, angelica. Some are for cleansing, some for pain, some for dreams. Not all are safe, but all are remembered. You watch as he selects a few dried blossoms, crumbles them with care, and stirs them into a warm wine infused with honey and thyme. It smells bitter, almost earthy. He hands it to you with a nod, instructs you to sip slowly, then rest beneath thick blankets until the morning. This is not the cold precision of modern pharmaceuticals. This is medicine as ritual, as poetry, as hope. And again, it makes you wonder whether the healing comes from the herbs or from the belief itself. In another setting, you might find a physician, not the kindly apothecary, but a man educated at Salerno or Montpellier, wrapped in velvet robes and armed with instruments of wood and brass. He carries a collection of tools in a leather satchel: scalpels, ear spoons, forceps, cautery irons. Some are engraved beautifully, symbols of the sun and moon, of planets that were believed to rule the body. For the physician of the day, astrology was not separate from medicine, but entwined with it. A wound to the left leg might be ruled by Saturn. A stomachache could rise with the tide. Again, imagine the doctor unrolling a chart of the heavens before deciding where and when to lance a boil. Treatment was guided by the stars as much as by symptoms. And then there are the tools themselves, fascinating, strange, even frightening. Cautery irons heated in fire until they glowed red, used to seal wounds or drive out supposed poisons. Cups made of horn or glass, used for bloodletting by suction. Trepanning drills, delicate and dreadful, for boring holes in skulls to release pressure or evil spirits. The instruments were handled with respect, even reverence, and cleaned with wine or vinegar. They were passed down, sometimes across generations, wrapped in soft cloth, polished with care. Again, let your thoughts linger here, not in fear but in awe. How remarkable that people with so little certainty tried so hard to heal. How strange and human and brave. Beyond the tools, there were texts, heavy tomes copied by hand, filled with looping script and vivid illustrations. Some depicted the human body not as we see it now, but as a mystical map, organs ruled by celestial bodies, veins that aligned with virtues or sins. Others were herbals, thick with drawings of foxglove and nettle, accompanied by quiet instructions. Crush this with goat's milk, steep that with wine, never pick this plant after sundown. The texts were often in Latin, sometimes in the vernacular, but always treated with the same care as scripture. They were kept behind doors or chained to tables to prevent theft. And yet, not all knowledge lived in books. Much was passed by whisper and memory, through the mouths of midwives, herbal women, and travelers who brought tales from far-off lands. One might learn that rose water cooled a fever, or that a paste of crushed sage could soothe a toothache. That mint grown near a graveyard was best avoided. That belladonna, so beautiful, was deadly. These secrets moved quietly through villages and towns, from hand to hand, like spells half remembered. Again, picture the wisdom carried in baskets and aprons, woven into lullabies hidden in recipes. A world where medicine bloomed not only from study, but from story. And then there were charms, little bags of herbs worn around the neck or pressed into pillows, pieces of parchment inscribed with protective verses, rings said to repel the plague. Medicines were not only swallowed, but worn, burned, prayed over. Healing was everywhere, in the steam of hot tea, in the circle of salt beneath your bed, in the rhythm of your grandmother's voice as she recited a cure passed down through generations. You may not understand the Latin or the astrology or the tools, but the care, the intention that you feel, that you carry, that comforts. And now, as the apothecary snuffs the candles one by one, and the scent of chamomile and lemon balm lingers in the air, let yourself drift. The tools are quiet now. The herbs rest in their drawers. The texts are closed. The fire has dimmed. And so too may your thoughts begin to slow, to soften, to find stillness. The world outside may be cold and unknown, but in this moment, wrapped in the warmth of old wisdom, you are safe. You are seen. And again, perhaps, just perhaps, you are healing too. Let us now step into a place of quieter healing, away from the bustling apothecary and the bloodletting physician, into the cloistered hush of a medieval monastery's infirmary, where time itself seemed to slow, and where healing was as much about the spirit as the body. Picture long, cool corridors echoing faintly with sandalwood footsteps, the stone walls thick with the smell of beeswax polish and ancient parchment. A single stained glass window casts a kaleidoscope of soft light across worn flagstones. It is morning, perhaps just after the chanting of lauds, and you are led gently by a brother in a woolen habit, his voice low, his hands steady, into a small chamber lit by candles and the pale light of dawn. This is the infirmary, not a hospital as we know it, but a sacred space set aside for the weak and the weary, where illness was treated not only as a bodily affliction, but as a trial of the soul. Again, breathe in the quiet of this place. Beds line the wall, straw-filled pallets with simple linens, each attended by a small wooden table holding a cup of barley water, a sprig of lavender, a wooden crucifix. There is no rush here, no metallic clang of instruments or scribble of urgent charts, only the gentle rhythm of routine. One brother moves from bed to bed with a basin of warm water, bathing fevered foreheads and blister hands. Another brings a thin broth, carefully spiced with herbs grown just beyond the cloister wall. The infirmarian, the monk responsible for care, recites soft prayers under his breath as he grinds mustard seed and horehound with a mortar and pestle. Every action is deliberate, every movement a kind of devotion. The rule of Saint Benedict, followed by countless monasteries, emphasized balance, rest, prayer, and labor. And within that rhythm, the sick were not burdens, they were blessings. To care for them was an act of divine service. Again, imagine lying there, wrapped in quiet, the scent of thyme and honey wafting through the open window, a psalm echoing softly down the corridor. No harsh voices, no needles, just warmth and care and time. The herbs used in monastic medicine were carefully recorded in hand-copied herbals, some of the most beautiful books of the age. They listed plants by their healing properties, with illustrations so detailed you might mistake them for pressed flowers. There was betony for easing headaches, St. John's wort for melancholy, comfrey for broken bones. The monks knew how to grow, harvest, and prepare each one. They knew the turning of the seasons, the phases of the moon, and the subtle shift in scent when a plant had reached its peak. And they knew that healing was never rushed. It came slowly, like the rising sun. Imagine now a garden tucked behind stone walls, its paths lined with rosemary and marjoram, bees drifting lazily among the blossoms. A place of peace tended in silence, where the very air hums with something ancient. This was the monastic physic garden. It was not grand, not showy, but every leaf within it held purpose. Again, let your thoughts wander through its rows, pausing beside valerian, crushing a sprig of mint between your fingers, watching as a monk gently waters a bed of sage with rainwater caught in a wooden barrel. These gardens were places of learning, but also of solace. Patients were brought here to sit in the sun, to breathe the fragrant air, to let the earth itself help them mend. There is a gentleness here rarely found in the broader world of medieval medicine. No bleeding, no cauteri, just soft hands, warm broth, and a deep belief that rest, true, unhurried rest, is essential to healing. Sometimes scripture was read aloud beside the bed. Sometimes psalms were sung in soft tones, their repetition like a balm. And sometimes nothing at all was said, just presence, just being. And again, perhaps that was enough. The infirmaries were often used not only for illness, but for recovery after long journeys, or for aging monks whose bodies had grown frail. Death, too, was met with grace. When the time came, the sick were not hurried, not prodded, not shunned. They were surrounded by prayer, by candlelight, by the soft chant of voices rising like incense. The infirmarian stayed beside them, holding a hand, whispering the final rites. Even death, here, was part of the rhythm. A breath, a pause, a return. Let us linger here a while longer in this cloistered stillness. Let the flicker of candlelight soothe your thoughts. Let the gentle clink of a mortar, grinding rose petals, and myrrh echo like a lullaby. No alarms, no urgency, just the slow unfolding of care. Again, imagine drifting to sleep beneath a linen sheet, the sound of Gregorian chant fading gently through stone walls, a warm compress resting on your brow. Outside, the garden blooms in quiet devotion. Inside, peace settles over you like a blessing. And in this moment, here now, you are part of that ancient rhythm. Let go of the noise. Let go of the pain. Let yourself rest, as so many have rested before you. Let the healing begin in silence. And now, dear listener, the day wanes. The shadows lengthen over cobbled lanes and thatched rooftops, and in the distance, a final bell tolls, calling monks to Compline, calling farmers from the fields, calling every wandering thought to stillness. Let us follow that sound into the hush of a medieval village at night, when firelight flickers behind shuttered windows and the world softens into darkness. Again, picture it. A narrow dirt road winding past wooden homes, smoke rising gently from chimneys, and a sliver of moonlight dancing on dew-kissed leaves. Lanterns sway in iron hooks near doorways, casting amber halos in the mist. Dogs curl by the hearth. A mother tucks her child beneath a woolen blanket, whispering a prayer to Saint Apollonia to ward off toothaches. Outside, a night breeze stirs the drying herbs strung from beams. Mugwort, vervain, dill, all tied not only for medicine, but protection. Because in this time, when daylight fades, superstition begins to breathe. Again, let your mind drift. To live in a medieval world was to sleep not in certainty, but in cautious hope. Night held mystery. It was a time for dreams, but also for spirits, for illness, for unseen dangers that crept through the dark. And so, people prepared. Doors were barred, not just against thieves, but against the unknown. Bowls of salt were placed near thresholds. Iron nails were hammered into door frames. Bread was left out for wandering souls. The bed itself was sacred. Beds were simple, wooden frames with ropes crisscrossed beneath straw-stuffed mattresses, sometimes shared by entire families. The wealthy had feather beds, velvet hangings, and bed curtains to keep in warmth. The poor slept near the hearth or in lofts above the animals, where body heat was precious. Nightwear was modest, a shift, a linen shirt, perhaps nothing at all. But the ritual of lying down was shared. Before sleep, one would cross oneself, recite a prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep, or in Latin, if one could recall it. Even those who could not read knew the cadence. It was rhythm that mattered, words that anchored the soul. And then there was the two-part sleep. Have you heard of it? In those times, people often slept in phases. First sleep, then a waking period, then second sleep. The hours between were filled with quiet tasks. Tending the fire, whispering with a spouse, praying, even pondering dreams. Again, imagine that stillness, that gentle break in sleep. A time when the world paused and you could sit beside a glowing ember, wrap a shawl around your shoulders, and listen to the wind outside. Perhaps you would drink a warm posset, milk thickened with ale and spices, or chew on a clove for bad breath. Perhaps you would write a line in a prayer book or listen for owls. This waking hour, strange to us now, was once common. A secret sliver of the night when thought and spirit stirred. And what of dreams? In the medieval mind, dreams were not mere flickers of memory. They were messages, warnings, visions from God, or temptations from darker forces. A dream of water might signal rebirth. A dream of teeth, illness. There were even books, passed hand to hand, that decoded these symbols. A snake meant betrayal. A white horse, good fortune. A fall from a tower, divine punishment. Again, consider how seriously such things were taken. A simple dream might be confessed to a priest, written into a diary, or mentioned carefully to a midwife. And in sleep, too, the devil was said to visit. A sudden shiver, a cold sweat, a sense of pressure upon the chest. These were seen as omens. Night terrors were not yet understood by medicine. They were blamed on witches, demons, or bad humors. To guard against them, people placed protective charms beneath pillows, carved saints, dried rue, or amulets tied with red thread. Even the arrangement of the room mattered. Beds were turned away from doors, mirrors were covered, and shoes were placed toe to heel so that spirits might become confused and pass by. Again, it may sound strange to us now, but imagine believing not just in science or symptoms, but in layers of the invisible, in protection by ritual, in safety earned through intention. In a world without electric light, these beliefs gave comfort. Night sounds were different too. No hum of traffic or distant sirens. Instead, the croak of frogs in a marsh, the howl of wind through stone alleys, the click of hoof on road as a late rider returns home. Perhaps a church bell chimes once, marking the midnight hour. Perhaps a dog barks, distant but sure. But mostly it is quiet, thick, enveloping quiet. And that silence was sacred. In monasteries, silence was not emptiness. It was presence. It was listening. It was reverence. Again, picture lying in your narrow bed, the linen sheet pulled to your chin, the soft warmth of your own breath settling into sleep. You've had your broth. The fire has been banked. Your fingers curl around a wooden rosary, smooth from years of use. You hear a distant chant from the abbey, or perhaps only remember its echo. Either way, you feel held. You feel seen. You feel almost ready to let go. Sleep was not just rest. It was renewal. It was repair. And though the night held fears, it also held possibility. In dreams, the poor might dine with kings. The sick might walk fields of light. The grieving might see a lost face just once more. Again, how deeply human to hope in dreams. And so, as the village settles under a thick blanket of stars, and as your breath slows with the rhythm of ancient night, let yourself slip fully into that time. Imagine the flicker of a dying fire, the creak of timber above you, the comfort of ritual, the embrace of shadow. No noise, no screen, just sleep, slow, deep, and full of forgotten magic. The kind of sleep only the old world knew. And as your thoughts begin to drift into that space between the waking and the dreaming, remember that countless souls have passed this way before you. Farmers and monks, apothecaries and children, lovers and wanderers, all folded into night, wrapped in silence, held by hope. Again, let go. Let go. Let the past keep watch as you dream. And now, as we reach the final stretch of this journey through the dim corridors and flickering candlelight of medieval medicine, let us lie still one last time, our thoughts wrapped in the soft hush of history. The physician has returned to his scrolls. The midwife has folded her linens. The monk has closed his herbal codex and whispered his last prayer of the night. All across the quiet, ancient world, the tools of care have been laid to rest. Bowls rinsed, candles snuffed, shutters drawn. Once more, close your eyes and imagine the fading glow of coals in a hearth, the cool scent of rosemary and smoke lingering in the rafters, and the far-off sound of an owl crying into the black night. The rush of ailments, the rituals of blood and balm, the strange humors and desperate hopes, all have softened now, fading into the peaceful rhythm of memory. Picture a narrow wooden bed, the linen cool against your cheek. Perhaps you are tucked beneath a woolen blanket that smells faintly of sheep's lanolin and the sun it once dried under. Your limbs are heavy in the best way, the kind of weight that means you are safe, held, known, and in the distance maybe a bell tolls once, low and slow, not to rouse but to remind. You are still in the world, and the world, in its own peculiar way, still cares. Again, remember the faces we've passed. The doctor with the scented gloves and silver tools. The barber surgeon with his stained apron and brisk hands. The cunning woman with her bundles of fennel and rue. The apothecary counting out poppy seeds by candlelight. The monk grinding betony and thyme beneath stained glass windows. These figures are no longer alive, yet their gestures echo still. Their work was imperfect, sometimes strange, even frightening, but it was stitched with meaning. They believed, even when knowledge was thin, that the human body could be coaxed toward peace. They believed in touch, in time, in herbs and incantations. They believed in comfort. And so do we in our own way. We too search for rest, for meaning, for warmth in the shadow. And as we lie here, centuries away from their crude instruments and whispered charms, perhaps we understand them more than we thought. Again, breathe. Feel the rhythm of your chest, the softness behind your knees, the warm press of your fingers curled inward like petals at night. You are here, but also elsewhere. With them, with us, with time itself. Let the images blur now, like ink and rain. Let the firelight in your mind fade to glowing embers. The room, the garden, the apothecary, the sickbed, all dissolve into a golden haze. And what remains? Just the heartbeat of story, just the hush of a world long vanished, just the memory of care, however strange it may have looked. As your breath deepens and your limbs grow still, think of the old books on dusty shelves, the herbals, the dream manuals, the diaries scrawled in the margins with remedies and regrets. They're all quiet now, too. And so, dear dreamer, let yourself follow them into sleep. Let your thoughts grow soft and tangled like ivy. Let them wander ancient halls, down stone stairways, across moonlit cloisters. Let them rest in beds of moss and lavender. You need not hold on anymore. There is nothing left to understand tonight. No remedies to learn. No ghosts to chase. Just the rhythm of history lulling you gently beyond the veil of wakefulness. Again, just rest. Just drift. And as you float between here and there, remember that the past watches over you, not with judgment, but with tender curiosity. It welcomes you. It makes room. And now, in the soft glow of closing thought, I offer one final blessing. May your sleep be long. May your dreams be kind. May you wake, when you're ready, with wonder. And until then, let the voices of time whisper gently in your ear. Let the herbs bloom. Let the bells toll. And let the centuries tuck you in. Now let your thoughts wander. I'll see you in another timeline. Good night.